on camera, and you're the focus of attention. Everyone's looking at you. They're deciding whether they like your shirt or not, whether you've combed your hair properly. What do you do with your body? Where do you put your arms? Well, how do you stand? I guess it's different for everybody, but are there any general rules or general tips in that area?
I have a dear friend, Christian Galvez, who is based in Cologne, who's a fantastic speaker, and he always believes that the body tells a story as much sometimes as the voice tells a story. One of the biggest challenges that I have when I'm coaching speakers is not their content. It's not what's coming out of their mouth. It is physically what's taking place in front of me. Because people cannot stand still. They fidget, they wander about the stage aimlessly, meaninglessly. They're telling something important to their audience as they back away from their audience, which subconsciously negates the point that they make. There are a number of tips and tricks that we can give to people to stabilize, to ground themselves in one spot and not wander around, to not jump from leg to leg, to not put their hands in their pockets or stand with their hands in front of them like a fig leaf, or their stands behind them like a security guard. There are certain tips that I will give to people. Put a pen in your hand as you speak, something to distract, something for your hands to do. So if I'm doing this with a pen, it feels natural and organic to you. I've got a pen. If I just wave my hand around, it's a little less organic. I don't know what to do with that hand. If you have a podium on stage, you can lean on that podium. You can put your hand on that podium to keep yourself from wandering aimlessly. The point is, keep your audience's focus on your message rather than on your physical discomfort. And this takes practice. It's a very hard thing for a lot of people to do. Moving with meaning, moving with intent, takes a great deal of thought and effort initially, but once you've got it, it makes perfect sense and you do it. So what I'll frequently tell people is, point one, find a place, stand firmly in that particular place, and take your entire audience in with your head, without your body. When I'm done with that idea, great. Now let me move to another place. Let's anchor there. Now that I'm here, I can do the same thing. I can take my entire audience in wherever they happen to be, and it keeps the focus entirely on me, on my face, and on my intent. Now with the camera, everybody thinks it's so much harder because you and I are not in the room together. But guess what? I know right where you are. You live right there. And if I look anywhere other than there, now I'm ignoring you. Now, if I speak to my slide deck and all my slides are over here or my script is over here, I don't care about you any longer. You and I aren't connected, right?
Yeah.
You live here. My entire audience. Right now, you and I are speaking together one-to-one. In about 2 weeks, I'll be at Cisco Live in Amsterdam, and we will get roughly 2.6 million impressions. And at any given point, I will probably have somewhere between 40,000 and 120,000 people in my audience. All 120,000 of them live right there in that little lens. And I have to keep remembering that. If I were in the room, would I be looking anywhere other than at them? Absolutely not.
No.
Stability.
Okay.
Focus. These are your keys to success.
I mean, I've noticed you leaning into the camera for important points as well. So you're not just static, even in, behind the camera. So
you're being vocal tone, yeah?
Yeah, that's the next thing is vocal tone, pitch, and volume. Yeah, I don't think about that. I guess they just happen. But do you need to think about it? I'm going to talk louder here on this bit, and I'm going to talk very softly at this part here. I don't know.
I think if you come from a theatrical background, as I do, that is a bit easier. In your case, maybe it's because you watched your father speak from the pulpit, and maybe that's what gave you a sense of how he connected with his audience. You are a very natural storyteller, but we all are natural storytellers. We just have to get out of our own way and allow ourselves to tell the story without judgment of ourselves piled on top of it. Varying vocal tone, I think, is important. I don't know that you need to vary pitch so much as you need to worry about falling into patterns. You've talked with somebody where the end of every sentence is a question, and then the next thing that they tell you is a question, and then at the end of the next one, they're asking you a question. And after a while, we start to fall asleep and we think, oh, could you please maybe end something down?
Is that in the Valley? They speak like that.
Well, it certainly has been equated to the Valley Girl concept. I have heard so many people, or everything drops off at the end. And you get to the end of the next sentence and that one drops. And then you get to the end of the next one and you don't hear the last word. Standard vocal patterns are very typical for people. If you can have a friend, a trusted colleague, point out what your little foibles are, your little patterns, that can be very helpful in starting to notice them. Same thing with ums and uhs. Ums and uhs are mental filler that then become verbal filler. I don't know the next thing I want to say. My mind has to process what's coming out next, but I'm uncomfortable with silence. Therefore, you know is a big one. Like, we hear these all the time, but people don't know how to embrace the pause instead. They have to speak. They have to fill the pause. So I work with a lot of people on embracing the pause. Stop, collect your next thought, and then deliver that thought. It's so much more powerful for an audience. It keeps them connected and leaning in and wondering, what's the person going to say next?
Yeah.
Varying vocal tone can be a part of that as well. If it's something very important, I need to slow down and I need to lean into it to assure that it's set apart from everything else I'm saying. If I'm just rambling on, as I tend to do, as you already know quite well, then I might blah, 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 blah. And when I hit the salient point, now I slow down and here's what it all leads to. And that naturally creates variety as well.
Yeah, I put a note on here about Martin Luther King, and his speeches were full of rhetoric. They had a rhythm to them. You could almost imagine him practicing with a metronome. Actually, I don't think he practiced. I think it was just a natural way. And this rule of threes, where you say something with the same introductory words, you talk about something, you talk even more passionately about something, and then you talk about something fantastic, and you just build up this crescendo. You can't learn that, can you? It's just a natural thing you've got, isn't it?
I'll say 50-50. It's a perfect example. Now, we always forget the first part of Martin Luther King, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
Absolutely.
This person was born into a world where he learned this type of rhetoric, how to build a story, how to craft a journey for an audience and take them along. The rule of threes, we can in fact learn. In fact, I do this a good deal in my sales training. So rule of threes can be applied in a number of different ways. They can be applied in terms of repetition to really make an idea land, creating 3 ways to say the same thing to assure that it sticks and that people internalize it. It can be used for impact. Build from 1 to 2 to 3, which creates a proof point of an idea. Or it can be used to shake things up in humor, in sets of 3. So for example, I ask you, can I get you something? Coffee, donut, a toupee? It's 3 things now where the third one shocks you and takes you out of the moment. It's something that you weren't expecting because it doesn't connect to the first 2. These are all methodologies for utilizing the rule of 3. But that, I think, can be learned rhetorically. And the easiest one is repetition. We always think within a story, if we just say something one time, our audience is intelligent. They're smart. They'll get it.
Yep.
Has nothing to do with intellect. We are bombarded on a daily basis with input, with little bits and flits that go into our mind and right back out the other side. And with so much stimuli coming at us, sometimes we have to be reminded why this stimuli makes sense. So repeating something 2 or 3 times within your talk, that rule of 3 works beautifully. Just find a different way to say it, do it 3 times, and the odds of that idea landing are so much stronger. And I think that can be learned.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I've run out of topics.
Not a chance. You and I.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking, I don't know how long we've been talking.